My name is Lody Tibor Lody in the Hungarian way. Americans turn everything all around. So in here, I'm Tibor D. Lody. You know, nobody can pronounce Lody and or Lody. That's and I was born in Hungary, a small community, about 5,000 population, where my father was a teacher and a principal in a grade school. My birth date is April 5, 1931. We spent a lot of times in front of my house playing soccer. And one day, my father's best friend came down from Budapest. And the first time ever I seen a motorcycle. And he stopped in front of a house between where we were playing game. And I went to look over the motorcycle. And I ended up slightly too close. My knee touched the hot tailpipe. Instantly a big blister growing on my knee, and I passed out. My father's friend was so concerned, picked me up, and where is the doctor? Where is the doctor's place? And somebody in the neighborhood told him that he is just visiting about 3 or 4 houses from where my home was, and he picked me up and run to the doctor to revive me. That was I remember it was so painful that I just totally went out, and I don't even know if I was breathing or whatever, but they revived me and I'm here. Well, my father was smoking 100 cigarettes a day. he he grow his own tobacco on our yard, and he cured the tobacco leaves. Then almost every evening, that was one of my chores to cut the leaves, little strings, then stuff it in with the help of a tube and a wooden stick, filter tip shell for cigarette. And every day we did, every evening we did it, and he smoked it. And one thing we noticed, sometimes we stuffed it too thick or too hard, or push it too hard, and the filter tip split open. And my father never complained that she didn't have enough cigarette. So that's enticed us, with my brother, to swipe a couple of cigarettes once to try it. My father always was saying it took him 33 years to learn how to smoke, because when he played cards with friends and come home, Mom says, "Oh, you smell so manly." So that's when he started smoking, for please her.
Oh, wow.
And well, my father noticed or smelled the smoke coming from the back of the house, and he came, took the cigarettes, tied a string on it, and tied on the rear end and hold your ankles. with a little cane, was spanking us. And when we cried, he said, "Don't cry, I'm just putting the fire out." So that was one of the first time I smoked a cigarette. I tried cigar later, but that we had to buy. So I had to get the money. And I get the money by serving when funerals were going on, or funeral mass was in the church. And because all the family members and relatives gave the altar boys money. And so later on, I bought a cigar with the money. And again, we went on the backyard, and my father noticed, again smelled it, and he said, "Okay, you guys want to smoke? I'll teach you how." And he told, "Now, take a deep breath and suck on that cigar real deep. And within 3 or 4 of those deep breath with the cigar smoke, we started to turn green. And that was the good cure. Neither my brother or I ever smoked after that. That was one of the incident, and the other thing, it's never were concerned about the sunburn. I don't remember ever having sunburn, even though all summer long was playing in front of the house with one black athletic trunk. And whenever we get thirsty, we never thought about going drinking water or something. We just climb up. A couple of mulberry trees was nearby, and we gorge ourselves with mulberry berries. And never washed anything. And right next to the trees, there were dirt road, and when the buggies went through with the horses, dust fly all over, but it didn't bother us. We never get sick of it. In my town, yes, we had one.
Wow.
One of my third grade teacher was, he initially was a captain in the Hungarian cavalry, and then when he retired from there, he graduated for teaching, and he lived about quarter of a mile from my house, from my father's house, and he was the only one who had an automobile. Wow. And don't ask me what model or who made it, because I don't remember. The Germans came in. They, even though they weren't occupying force, they shot Jewish people in their home, weren't allowed to leave their home for not even 1 minute. And my parents were friends with them. And anytime we went we were on the south edge of the town. Anytime we went into the town, my sister and I, Mom always told us to knock on the door or the window for the people and ask them if they need something and go get it. We helped them out. I well knew them for many, many years. And like I said, they were friends with my parents. So we were concerned about them. Oh, I seen SS and soldiers driving by, or sometimes stopped and bought some food or in the market, or and but no, didn't really pay attention to them. The main thing was when the Germans uh, came in, the governor and the whole our country was concerned that maybe the Americans will bomb cities or towns where they thought the Germans were. And my well, the reason my father smoked so many cigarettes because he not only was a principal and a teacher in the school, he was also the bookkeeper for the town. He was the bookkeeper for the community store. He was the fire chief, and he became an air raid chief. He were very, very heavily involved, and he was when he came home in the evening, his relaxation was sitting down his piano and play the piano several hours, and all from memory.
Wow.
He had a photographic memory. Well, as the Germans were losing, the Russians are beating them over in Russia, when they arrived to the Hungarian border, and they came into Hungary, the soldiers were like, I hate to use that term, like animals, because they were drunk with vodka from early in the morning and drink all the time instead of anything, vodka. And they were news going around that they were raping women whenever they could find. So we wanted to escape from the Russians because the Germans were saying, we will stop them here, we will stop them there, different locations on the highway, main highway going up toward Budapest and then Austria. And so we went, so this, first we went to a place where my sister's classmate in Conservatory of Budapest, my sister became a concert pianist, and one of her classmates, we went to their home. It's a northwest, about 60, 70 kilometers from where I lived, and hope to get some there to stay, and hope that we will be out of the way from the Russians' main attack. But when we get there, their house was full with relatives. So we stayed maybe a week or so or two. We rented a house nearby, and one of the things which happened that time, my father was going in town we were on the edge of this town called Hosnos, and find my third grade teacher in uniform. He was drafted in, and his duty was to move the Jews toward Auschwitz. And we find out, I think, 3 families, Jewish families from our town was in there. And he actually, my father or mom find out, ask if we can have him for dinner a couple of days while they are in town. They didn't have very much food, so they were allowed, and they stayed there, and my mom cooked and fed them until they had to move and we had to move because the Russians were coming too close. And that when we were moving, we were going to another girlfriend of my sister, also from the Conservative of Budapest. And then we were in a railroad station waiting for the train to come. Name of the town was Komárom. And as we were on waiting for the train, the Germans come and checked everybody's ID, and when they get to us, they said, "How come you?" That's to my father. "How come you don't have a uniform on?" He said, "I never been a military. I never had a gun in my hand." "No, your age group, you're supposed to be in the military." Then, well, he spoke fluently German, so he could talk to them. And they gave him 7 days to take care of his and settle his family someplace. Then he had to report into the military. And so we went to that other girlfriend house, which is that the town name was Jersen-Marton, where is one of the oldest monasteries, Benedictine monasteries of the whole Europe. And when we get to my sister's girlfriend's family, that house was full too. Everybody was trying to get away from the Russians. And they find a family who took us in. My mom, my sister, and my brother and I. Then he went in and reported in and was enlisted into the military. The good thing was for her or him that the general of that Hungarian military unit he know all of the people who were in his charges were like my father, 40 some years old, 45, 47, never had a gun in their hand, never even fired a gun in their life. So anytime the Germans came to him and said, "Okay, we want your troops to dig in and fight the Russians." Well, the general had more sense than the Germans, so every time he was told to engage his troop with the Russians, during the night he moved the whole troops 200 kilometers farther west. So I don't know how many times it happened, but finally my father's military unit was captured by the Americans, and they were like, in concentration POW camp, and we stayed in. And when the Russians, actually first the Germans came, when the Russians were getting very close and wanted to have all the boys from the monastery, I and my brother was accepted to go to the continuous school in the monastery school. And they wanted to take the boys to Germany. But the head of the monastery and the monastery was under the protection of the International Red Cross. And the man from Switzerland, he was the consul from Switzerland and representing Red Cross, International Red Cross, and they told the Germans that they can have the boys only through their blood. Well, the Germans back off. They didn't want to kill a priest and a consul. Then, when the Russians get close, the monastery was opened up. Not until that point, no ladies or women was allowed. This time they took 5,000 ladies and daughters in, and as a place of refuge. And when the Russians came, they went through the whole monastery, make sure there is no man hiding with the woman. Then a short while later, they came with the truck and they wanted to have a boys, and it was another standoff. And they backed off too. So we were safe in the school and the monastery. And the Germans, naturally, they wanted to have to make us be part of the Hitler Jugend. For the Russians, I have no idea. Well, my mom and with my sister and my brother left from there about three months after the Russians came in. It was early 45. Well, my mom and my sister and my brother went back home. And they left me there because my mom's dream was that the oldest, there's a custom in Hungary, the oldest son become a priest, either the teacher or the priest. But so they left me there because I told Mom I don't want to be a priest, but she thought maybe if you leave me there and I get in the charge of one of the priests I was in a good term with, and so I stayed, and all through the summer, no school, but we were just fooling around, had some kind of a dormitory experiences type thing. And one thing I didn't like the priest who was we were in his charges. And at that time I used to write poems. And most of the poem was not very complimentary to the priest. But he never found out who was writing it. I was writing most of my poems at that time on the toilet drawer. And he went there and he read it.
Okay.
And he said, those poems are real good on the door. Who's writing it? And I didn't have enough guts to tell him that I was. And so that's the way the summer went. And middle of August, the priest who was in charge of me called me in his office and drilled me and tried to convince me that go into and get ready to study to be a priest. And any excuse, anything I said, but I want to do this. Oh, you can do that here. We have a farm. I want to do that. We have beehives and things, and you can work with that too. That was my fascinated with, and so, I don't know how many other things. For about 3 hours we went through, and I got a little bit indignant, and finally I told him, you better write a letter to my mom to come and get me, because if she doesn't, if I'm here when the new semester starts in school in September, I will break every window in this building. Well, I don't know how many thousand windows were there. But, and he says, oh, you wouldn't do that. I thought, okay, I'll show you. So I walk out of his office, and right 3 doors down there was a divider on the hallways to cut down air circulation, because the wind was like wind going around in the hallway. And so there was all glass windows on the side and door. And I walk out of his office, and I walk through the door and one window without opening it. He heard
You walked through it?
I walked through it. Not a cut on me, not a scratch on me, but he heard the glass shatter on the cement floor. He didn't bother to come out. He know that he lost. So he wrote a letter to my mom, tell him that please come and get him, because he made up his mind that not to be a priest. I thought I was brave. Well, I was like, I don't know what the right word would be. How do I describe? I was a brat, let's say, nicely. And he knew that he won't be able to convince me. So my mom came and got me and took me home. I've been, because my brother was my mom's favorite. I was so outsider, but my grandmother was my grandmother. I was my grandmother's favorite. Unfortunately, when I get back to my mom took me home. My grandmother died about 2 months earlier before I went home. And but no, I was hot-headed, and I was doing what I thought it was good for me, and maybe you call it selfish that, but I don't. I thought as a 14 years old, 15 years old, I was too headstrong on that way. Then we get after we get home. Not long after I get back, when mom come crying, telling me that she can't make lunch because no wood to cook. And said, no, but okay, Mom, I'll take care of it. I get a burlap bag, went out to on the streets where the cows were herded, and they went early in the morning. By middle of the day, their cow paddies were dry, so I picked them up, put them in a bag, and took it home for Mom to cook dinner or lunch. I was kept doing that, collected every time I went out, I collected some more, because then with my brother, we went to we get a job to work on rice paddies, and our duty was to pull the weeds carefully enough so we won't pull the rice plants with it, because the weeds grew faster than the rice. So we just all summer long we walked 5 kilometers to the rice paddies, and from about 7 o'clock in the morning until 5 in the evening, we were working, standing in the water up to our knees, and reach down, hook our fingers under the roots of the weed and pull it up and put it on the side, and somebody come behind us and collected and carried it out of the paddies. And we ended up having about close to 200 kilogram, which is almost 400 pounds of rice earned, that much rice. And my mom was delighted, and she wanted to spend all of it right now. And I said, no, Mom, no. We just sell as much as we need for getting food or essentials. Later on, about 3 months later, in the middle of the winter, we could sell the 1 pound of rice for 3 or 4 times for the money than what we would get at the time when there was plenty of rice all over. Even our neighborhood grocery store bought the rice from us. And well, initially he paid only little money, but by before Christmas and things and before New Year's, we get good enough money to even spend something for Christmas.